Welcome to Searching for Answers, another episode learning from the Word of God as we invite it to teach us what it meant when it was first written and what it means in our lives today. We're working our way through the first letter to Timothy, the pastoral epistles, and we're right at chapter 3 now, where it really gets interesting, where we ask ourselves, what about the church leaders? What is their position, their role, and what's incumbent on them as they conduct themselves accordingly? Joining our conversation this evening, Dr. Bernard Taylor, research professor in religion at Loma Linda University, Old Testament scholar, together with New Testament scholar, Dr. Leo Rancelin, Associate Dean of the School of Religion here at Loma Linda University. My name is John Jones in the Divinity School at La Sierra, and we are up and running. Grab your Bible, catch up with us as you can. It's chapter 3, 1 Timothy. Leo, start us off.
So reading from chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. The saying is sure, whoever aspires to the office of bishop desires a noble task. Now a bishop must be above reproach, married only once, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable, an apt teacher, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, and not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, keeping his children submissive and respectful in every way. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may be puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace and the snare of the devil.
So they're the internal qualities and the outer appearance. Both
exactly
are
right.
Here, I think. Yeah.
Right.
What strikes you here?
Well, what strikes me is I think of my years of being a pastor and how often I was on the church board, and every year we had to fill the positions of elders and deacons, and almost always we spoke of the responsibilities of the elders and deacons. Here's what this position entails in terms of the responsibilities. And yet here, there's really not a whole lot about responsibilities. It's all about the qualifications, the moral qualities of this person that one should attend to. So that's what strikes me from the outset.
Yeah. If you were translating this from Greek, would you take the same decision that the New Revised Standard does, using the word bishop?
Overseer is another possibility.
Episkopos is the Greek. It literally is one who looks over or exercises oversight or overseer. And of course, our English word Episcopalian. Episcopacy comes from that. We're not sure of the structure of administration and leadership, the pastoral structure in the early churches in the first century. Were there 2 levels, deacons and elders, or are there 3 levels here? We just aren't sure. It has to do in part with what kind of date we give to this letter.
Right.
But at any rate, it's clearly a letter that represents the responsibilities, the joys and challenges of being a shepherd of a flock in a big city like Ephesus. Lots of issues and problems in the city at large and even within the congregation. So Timothy, we are to understand, has been appointed there. He's a comparatively young and inexperienced person, and this looks like it's his first parish assignment as far as we can tell. And so somehow Timothy also needs to relate to those who are the elders, the church congregational leaders, and there's this list, as you say very well, Leo, these list of qualities, personal qualities of being somehow.
And as I look at the structure of this, as you've just pointed out, Dr. Jones, it seems to me it's perhaps similar to the structure that you see in diaspora Judaism and synagogues, where there was a board of elders, with a leading bishop, perhaps, a leading person.
A governor or president or something. And then there's a sergeant at arms, apparently.
Right, and then elders and deacons, because we see a reference in chapter 4 verse 14, to the laying on of hands by of the council of elders here. So a very basic structure, a board of elders, some elders and deacons. And I think the other thing that I think it's important to underscore is that these positions, to the best of my knowledge, are not theologically grounded, so to speak. They're practical, they're functional, there to discharge the duties and responsibilities of leadership of the church at Ephesus.
Excuse me, go ahead.
So we're looking at a time when the church has developed far enough and the congregations are big enough to have some assigned leadership. And Leo, you mentioned your time in ministry. I know in my experience and down under in Australia for initially, and then in upstate New York and here in Loma Linda, in those days when I began ministry, there was no place for anybody to say, I'd like to be a conference president. I'd like to be in leadership. I would like now to begin to learn what that requires and how I can best do it. And the saying is, whoever aspires to the office of bishop desires a noble task. It is an open situation. And so there's one Paul, there's Timothy and Silas, and was there another one? And he sets up congregations. My conclusion is that it wasn't until Paul hit Corinth that he moved from an evangelist who planted a church, as it were, it's a metaphor, that would just grow up. But Corinth never grew up. And Paul had to learn how to minister by letter in absentia, and encourage and support. And Corinth would never go away for him. It was always a problem. And there are congregations like that. And we all have our experiences of them if we've been in ministry long enough. But here is organization arising, and there are people who are gifted with leadership. And I don't think they ran seminars and that sort of thing, but we have some basic requirements so that, and as I read them, there is an attempt to have as little baggage as possible. So some basic rules.
That's very well said. Right. So there's no disparaging of someone who wants to be a leader.
Yes.
There's a kind of a salute. Yes, this is noble. Now let me fill it in for you. Right?
And as I said at a previous session, I think this falls for me under the umbrella of church administration and leadership, the challenges that he had. Because if we bring in parts of chapter 5, there it looks like there might have been some partiality, there might have been some accusations leveled against an elder that were unwarranted. So Paul gives some counsel here. You need evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if someone persists in sin with respect to an elder, drag them before the entire congregation, rebuke them. We certainly don't want to do that nowadays. But when you piece what's in chapter 5 together, as well as what is said here, it looks like there were some challenges with respect to the appointing of elders. And so Paul wants to, it must not be a new convert, someone who's mature in the faith, who doesn't exhibit these qualities, getting drunk and violent and quarrelsome and so on, but some more positive qualities. Those are the kinds of persons you want to lock in on for leadership.
And as we go on, we see Timothy lacking in leadership and organizational skills, and at every, well, not every, but at many ordination services, stand on your own 2 feet and don't let them push you around. This may be a way of encouraging Timothy to realize the resources that lie at hand and their desire to help and to support, and to those individuals to help and support and uphold the hands, as we often say from the story of Joshua in the Old Testament. And And this is trying to get it established.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Apparently so. You know, in the ancient Roman world, at this very time, we've hinted a little at some of the rather colorful religious currents and groups at that time. The fact is that you've got a kind of a spectrum of religious groups, some of which were really very conservative, legalistic, and I don't just mean Judaism. I mean within the larger Gentile world, the sects that worshipped Apollo, for example, the god of order, who rises in the east in his chariot with the 4 horses out in front and gallops faithfully every single day across the sky until evening, and then goes around and gets ready to do it again. The regularity, the dependability, that Apollonian kind of religion, all the way through the spectrum, and gradations, all the way to the worshippers of Dionysus, who was the god in charge of wild parties and drunkenness, you know. And so Christians have got this sort of panoply out in front of them in the Roman Empire, and they have to ask themselves, where is our slot? Where do we fit? Here or here or here? Are we more to the Apollo side? Are we more to the Dionysus side?
Right.
Any sect making its way through the Roman Empire in that time had to ask and answer that kind of question. And Paul here is kind of pulling things into the direction of Apollo, it seems to me. You know, the people who keep their cars washed and lawns mowed, or whatever, so to speak, you know, upright, respectable. And the fact, I think you've already hinted at this, both of you, the fact that verse 3 has to throw in some negatives.
Yeah.
Hints at the fact that there may have been some unfortunate experience.
Right.
You know?
We've had some drunkards and violent people running around the church.
Yeah.
We can't have that.
The very fact that you call for nobility and the opening aspiration already says, hey, people, you want this? All right, take it seriously. You know, get real about this, and don't just think this is another feather you can put in your cap and arrogate to yourself over. This is not like some local Roman magistracy in the court system or something, as there was a lot of corruption and arrogance, but rather this is a call to inner qualities as well as external respect and for your decency. You know? Does that work for you?
Absolutely. I'd like to pick up on a point that Dr. Taylor made earlier about Timothy.
Yeah.
Because here Paul waltzes off to Macedonia and he leaves Timothy at Ephesus. And the more I read through this epistle, he really had his hands full. And Timothy, you know, is a young lad, right? As Paul says, don't let them despise your youth. And as you alluded to in 2 Timothy, hey, God didn't give us a spirit of cowardice, a spirit of power, of love and self-discipline. And don't forget the prophecies that were made about you, right? So he's always, seems to me, trying to strengthen him, buttress him, to really tackle these challenging issues that he has in front of him here as a pastor of this church.
And the irony, of course, is that these qualities, or lack of them, were what made him a faithful assistant. He was not looking to, he was no threat to Paul.
Yeah.
He didn't want to take it over. He loved supporting him when Paul needed some more ink. He had it there. When he needed something.
Papyrus.
Yes, papyrus, cutting it, trimming it, all of these things he thrived on. I don't think he was anxious to go out in ministry. His ministry was assistant. And now Paul's not going to be around forever, and he needs to model this transition where you have a local overseer. And notice where it says, the office of bishop desires a noble task. Now a bishop must be above reproach. There's the notion of bishop, it's sort of an exegesis of it. So all of this is going on, and Timothy is perhaps easily threatened by this, and Paul's point is, you have a rich resource here that has been put into place. Make sure you use it, and make sure you choose the right sort of people, not people who will never be a threat to you. Put in the people who have the abilities that you lack.
You know, it's interesting when you piece together from the from the Pauline corpus what he says about Timothy and Titus. I'm always struck that I think Titus was more, what's the right word, able to tackle really difficult situations, because at Corinth, in 2 Corinthians, towards the latter part, it's Titus who steps to the plate to help him with the issues. And we're going to get to Titus. He puts him on Crete. And when we examine what the island of Crete was like, I'm not sure Timothy could have handled that.
Yeah, you got to wonder, don't you?
So
it's a rough place.
It is a rough place, exactly. It's like the wild, wild west, as we're going to see here. So Timothy needed some periodic and regular encouragement to handle the challenge in front of him here at Ephesus.
Looks like in the larger sense, Paul is saying, Timothy, respect the elders, respect the women, respect everybody, respect yourself. Self-respect and respect for others are not mutually exclusive.
And be an example in speech and conduct.
Yeah. Okay. Above reproach. That means nobody in the village or in the town or in that part of the city can point a finger and credibly lay some charge.
Right.
Married only one. That's the Greek there is the husband of one wife. Now that has the potential to be translated a couple of different ways. Would you make the same choice that the NRSV does? Married only once. What does either of you make of that? Yeah, either one of us. Start off and
I'd like to wrestle with the original, right?
Sure.
Right, as you say.
Husband of one wife.
That's already an interpretation here.
Yeah, it's already an interpretation. That's right.
In the NRSV.
So is the issue polygamy,
right,
or serial polygamy, or what?
Paul is not intending to be obscure here. I think the readers knew exactly what he was talking about.
I think so. Yeah.
But we don't have the notes of the committee that met to make this decision at the time, and I often wish that we did. But however it turns, there are, well, he goes on to say, for instance, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable, and then verse 4, he must manage his own household well. How do you know whether somebody will be a good overseer? He's married. He has children. Is he a good father?
Right.
Because we have seen the analogy, the metaphor of the family here in 1 Timothy, and it is mirrored in reality. When we talk about a good family, we assess that by certain criteria, which will, in the absence of an MBA or some such qualifications, go a long way to tell you how this man will deal with larger responsibilities. And child training is not an easy task. And if he is not willing to take it seriously, take his responsibilities in hand and deal with this situation, it's a good chance. And if he wants to be a bishop at the same time, then he really fails the qualifications because of his priorities and where his interests lie. He's more interested in the limelight than the responsibilities.
I think that's very well said. It's a common human pattern. We all see it, don't we?
Yes.
And we need, still today, this admonition. The cultural context may have called forth some of these particular things explicitly, but the principle still holds water for us today, doesn't it? not quarrelsome, not a lover of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well thought of by outsiders.
I think that is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, because Christians were so easily disposable and could be thrown to the lions.
Yes, yes. A loving and lovable demeanor
Yeah.
that outsiders are attracted to, not somebody who retreats. And the note so far through here of being a part of the community, the larger community, referred to here as the outsiders, is an indication, because that's where growth is going to occur. If you wait for natural attrition, where you have children and grandchildren, it will move much more slowly.
Yeah.
But if you can communicate,
Values.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, model them and communicate them in a way that is attractive.
Yeah.
Because Judaism had the same response in the light of the Eastern religions.
That's right.
They stood for law and order.
Yes, yes, yes.
And people were sick of all of this sensuous religion, and they turned to Christianity, and these are the proselytes in the New Testament.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You know, when we look at this list, these are qualities that were not unknown in the larger Gentile world. Greeks, Romans did aspire to some of these characteristics.
Yes.
It was a way to kind of command respect in a way. Now you have to be careful which ones you include. But certainly the thing about temperance and sensibility, common sense, not given to excess wine, not drunken, not violent. Those are all things that have their own echoes in the sort of judicious, managed, middle-of-the-road kind of life that a respectable person in the Gentile world would manifest. Where I see a difference, and going beyond, is in some particular things. Certainly not a lover of money. People who were respectable in the ancient Roman world were lovers of money. They may not show it, but they mostly did. There was a lot of conspicuous consumption. My goodness, they built their houses in such a way that when you're feasting and banqueting with your friends, bypassers out on the sidewalk could look in through the atrium and see. And this was partly a matter of simply showing off to the riffraff. Look how important and profligate I even am in my lifestyle.
And to add to that, it looks like you may well, from chapter 6, have folks in there using ministry, or as he says here in 6:5, imagining that godliness is a means of gain.
Yeah, that's right.
So you could have some in there wanting to
have their own motives.
pluck string for profit, the word of God, as Paul says.
That's right.
Second
And it's a real problem. Yeah, a real problem. Even we see Paul complaining in the Corinthian correspondence, I have a right to expect from my congregants the financial support that these other super apostles, you know, with their fancy tailored suits and all have. But he says, I forego that. And I think we have something of Paul's spirit in the text here as we have. Another thing, hospitable. Yeah, there was a certain level of hospitableness practiced in the larger Roman world, but it was hospitality extended to your peers or people above you whom you were kissing up to, you know, so you would have them in for banquets. That's a kind of perverse hospitableness, isn't it? Here, I don't think it means that at all. I think it means taking care of those under you, as Jesus says in the parable. Why do you only invite people, or in Matthew chapter 5, why do you invite only people who can pay you back? Invite the people precisely who have nothing to pay you back. Now there's hospitality.
Right.
So the Christian way has built on some of these virtues. The ancient Romans had lists of virtues and vices. They knew something about this.
Right.
But the Christian way gives it another spin, adds a depth to it all, and makes it a way of integrity instead of a way of showing off.
Exactly. The gospel baptizes the Greco-Roman ethical codes.
That's right, yeah. And deepens it down.
Indeed.
You know, right.
If I could say one thing here about verse 6.
Yeah.
Not a recent convert, so that he may not be puffed up with conceit and fall into condemnation. Seems to me Paul's concerned that recent converts perhaps obtain a little bit of knowledge, and it goes to their head, and they begin to destabilize the church. And I think evidence for that would be chapter 1, verse 7, where he's talking about teachers of the law who don't have understanding, and they say things about which they, don't really know much about. And so that looks like it's a problem here at this church. Folks teaching with inadequate amount of knowledge. We certainly don't want an elder like that.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting how some of the four cardinal virtues in Greek are being touched upon here.
In a certain way.
Yes. So that this is calling the society of the time to the best of itself.
That's right. Yes. I think that's well said. Yeah.
which again, to outsiders would be impressive and a good witness for the household of God. They are embodying these values of their culture in a richer and deeper way.
It seemeth me that in Paul's letters, he's really working. This is shirt sleeve theology. He's got his sleeves rolled up now. But in his letters across the board, his 13 epistles are at least taken as essentially authentic. Always and always in the center, first of all, is never compromise the cross of Christ.
That's right.
Now, he's not doing that here, but in much of his writing, he said, don't think that you, by your good doing, can somehow add to what Christ has done. Don't compromise the cross. That's Christ's doing. Don't mess with that and interfere with it. Don't intrude your own efforts, your own legalism on top of salvation by grace through it. That's the first principle. But he's got a couple of others. It seems to me that he also wants to say, and look out for the weaker members of your congregation. Look out for those who are new and weaker and still have a ways to go. Don't charge them too early with too much responsibility.
We're going to see that with widows. That's coming.
The widows for sure. Right. That's right. But the third principle seems to me, and this is just my own way of reading it, always ask yourself the question, what will the neighbors think? And it seems to me he's got that one going here for sure.
Right.
We each encounter people who have a profound integrity about them, great people. They don't be great for the sake of a kind of attributed greatness. It wells up from the wellspring of the heart. And we'll have to look at that some more as we keep reading our way through Timothy here in searching for answers.